Well, welcome. Tonight should be an interesting conversation. But we're going to talk about the first 120 days. I guess it seems like a lot longer than 120.
Seems like a million years, Al.
But it's been 120 days from the liberal perspective. Why don't we start with introductions?
I'm Glenn Wyke. I'm a Milford Democratic Town Committee member, currently the treasurer. I'm also a town meeting member.
And I'm Rand Barthel. I live in Mendon. I'm a member of the Democratic Town Committee in Mendon, and I'm also a climate activist working with 350 Mass to work on climate issues in the state.
Lauren Wilton, also a Democratic Town Committee member, former chair. I am on the Finance Committee, but I don't represent the Finance Committee in this conversation. Mm-hmm. And I'm also a town meeting member.
Neither do I. Where should we start?
Let's talk about corruption and greed.
Yes, good place to start.
Because, I don't know, it seems like somebody made an awful lot of money in the first 100 days of his presidency, and I'm not seeing anybody feeling good about the cost of eggs.
There's nothing more symbolic than Trump receiving a $400 million plane from a foreign country, which will be his after his presidency. I think that says it all. He also had some kind of meme coin that he started, and it was known that the people who bought into the coinage the most would get access to Trump. So people are buying access to him. And that's just like the tip of the iceberg. There's the
usual playing golf every weekend at public expense on his golf courses.
And then there's King's Day. Or in our world, No King's Day.
No King's Day.
Where
yes.
he's going to have a parade with military and tanks. We don't even know if the bridges will support all the tanks, but let's just see what happens.
Probably have to repave the streets
yeah.
after the tanks.
Oh, yeah, all for this great leader. So while all of this is going on, he's got his little flying palace. He's got a dinner tonight with people donating money to him personally. This isn't to his campaign. This is to him personally, so that he can profit off this cryptocurrency. And what is cryptocurrency? It's nothing good, but we're all invested in it because it's part of the Dow now, thanks to the Republicans. So
it's basically a money laundering vehicle.
It's a money laundering
oligarchs
vehicle.
And dictators and drug lords.
Well, wasn't that the same thing they said about Hunter's paintings and being put on board of Burisma?
Did Hunter and his laptop get a flying palace?
Well,
I mean, the numbers are so much tinier.
It's embarrassing.
And
it's
Hunter
ridiculous.
Biden was a private
It's like,
citizen
this
also.
is like 100x what anything Hunter was ever accused of.
I'm not a fan of nepotism, but Hunter Biden was a private citizen, not part of the Biden administration. There was never any proof in any way that that Joe Biden had profited in any way from
what he was doing.
From what he was doing. So it's just an entirely different animal here. The Trumps are blatantly and openly being bribed. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And they set us up for it. Oh, look at all the corruption over there. And meanwhile, I mean...
Well, it's the standard playbook that he learned from Roy Cohn, which is always accuse others of the thing of which you are yourself most guilty.
Yes, and then deny, and then when you get caught, you go, what's the big deal?
Right.
What's the big deal? I mean, you know, we've only had the Constitution for over 200 years, but rip it right up.
It was the same thing with lawfare, where he was accusing Biden's DOJ of going after him, you know, on specious reasons, and now he is using the DOJ to intimidate the media and intimidate people he doesn't like. You know, it's the same exact thing.
When you're a government employee, for crying out loud, you can't even tip your postal carrier more than $20 at the holidays, right? This guy's going to go home if he ever leaves office, with a flying palace. How is that logical? How is that fair? How is that legal? It's not. It's just flat out, it's not legal.
Well, and not only is it the 400 million, they are going to have to strip that thing down to the down to the studs
No, it's $1 billion.
to look for
Bugs.
bugs.
Yeah.
And spend about $1 billion, as you're saying, to put it back
Looking
together.
for bugs, I can't
And
imagine.
meanwhile,
is that
Boeing
expensive.
is hard at work building 2 new Air Force Ones from the scratch, the way it should be done. And
I was
you
going
know,
to say, by the time they put the military defense in there, it's $1 billion jet.
yeah, that's right.
And so what is Qatar getting in return?
Yeah, that's the question.
That's the obvious question.
Yeah.
Because they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. There's a quid pro quo.
quo.
Has anybody heard that expression before? Sounds familiar. He didn't get in trouble for it before, but that's only because the president of Ukraine wasn't falling for it. And let's talk about, while we're talking about corruption and greed, let's just talk about what happened with these little setups. It's just like this, where Trump sits down with another leader and then tries to humiliate them or embarrass them. So you had the president of Ukraine and that whole thing with Vance, why aren't you wearing a suit, and that kind of nonsense. And just yesterday, the president of South Africa coming up with these lies about how white farmers are getting genocided. What? And the president's sitting there going, where is this video you're talking about? I've never seen this. This is the president of the other country.
South Africa, yeah.
It's because Trump, it's all propaganda. And let's talk about oh my God, I could just go off. I could just host the show, Al. You don't even have to talk. I'm on a roll. Because we're going to get rid of NPR and we're going to pressure all of the Washington Post and the New York Times and we're gonna gut PBS, and so the only valid, so now
and not only that, we're going to take over Harvard and tell Harvard who it can employ, who it can admit, and who it can and what subjects it can teach.
Fortunately, Harvard fought back.
Fortunately.
Well, are they?
Yeah, they are.
They're fighting
did.
They are
back,
now. They are now.
but they're letting people go and shutting down programs.
They are shutting down programs
They're not getting funded.
because their funding is being suspended. And
Well, it's $9 billion a year goes to Harvard from the feds.
Right,
And everybody makes a big deal out of they have $54 billion in their kitty.
yeah,
But at $9 billion a year, if they keep it up, it's going to go away pretty quick.
it will. And not only, they can't actually use it all because a lot of it is earmarked in various ways because it's bequests that are for specific things. So they can't actually do that. But the net result of all this, a lot of that research funding that's being cut in the name of stopping anti-Semitism, quote unquote. Why do you cut medical research to stop anti-Semitism? Tell me that. And that research is stuff that will produce results that will benefit everybody. And I mean, you're in the medical business. You know how this works.
These labs are the feeder system for all of the medical research in this country. People think that it's done by these private organizations, but it's not. Government funds a lot of the research that happens here because a lot of it may not end up turning a profit for quite some time. So private entities don't want to do it because it's too expensive.
You cannot get funding for basic research.
That's right.
At the end of the day, there's a reason NIH funds, I could be wrong, but it's in the high 80% of fundamental research.
That's right.
Because if I go out to raise money and somebody says, how are you going to turn a profit?
Right, because the first question they'll ask.
If I'm going to invest money and I'm an investor, I want to know how I'm going to get it back. And if you turn around and say, it's for the good of mankind.
It says, well, that's why I have a charitable foundation over here. And so
there's a reason that, NIH, it's in the high 80s.
And it's not just NIH, it's all scientific research has to be done that way because you don't know whether it'll ever get used or what it'll get used for. One of my physics professors won the Nobel Prize for discovering or being the first to measure nuclear magnetic resonance, which is the basis for MRI imaging.
Wow.
When he did this, he told us when he did this research, he never had any idea that it would ever have any practical application. But But that research was done, and because it was publicly funded, it is owned by the American people, and anybody can use it. And therefore, anybody who has a brain and an idea can go and use it and build something with it. And that's why all of this basically ideologically motivated and control motivated cutting of funding is also killing the goose that lays the golden eggs.
Well, that's a good time to start talking about Doge, because Doge
Right.
went in with a hacksaw and just started slicing and didn't really consider chainsaw and didn't really consider what they were cutting. It was Musk and these teenagers and early 20s guys who went in there and just started slashing. One of the first things that the Trump administration did was get rid of all the inspector generals who could have told them where maybe to look for fraud if that's really what they were about.
It's not what it was about.
But it was never really about that. It was just cutting. It was just about cutting government down the size.
Well, it was also about getting control of heaps and piles and shiploads of personal data, which has been offloaded, no doubt, onto servers that Musk controls that he can use later for whatever purposes he wants. I mean, you and I, all of us, are in there.
Yeah.
And heaven knows what he's going to do with the information.
I mean, he's a private citizen, and how he got this access, I don't understand. I mean,
He got it by violating
a
all kinds of
designee.
laws.
He was Trump's designee.
Well, he gave Trump
$300 million bucks.
Yeah,
He
$300
gave
million
him
bucks to win the election.
That's
So-
the reason. He didn't go through the normal process. Everybody else had to go before the
Which
Senate.
gets back to the corruption.
Yeah,
This
which
whole
all-
thing is a
It's a money
racket.
grab.
It's a racket.
money grab. Yeah, it's a money grab. I mean, because why would you put? I mean, and he tried to do this the first time around, but this time it's just even more blatant. Why would you put people in charge of each agency who not only don't know anything about it, but are actually working to undermine the purpose of the agency?
Or have obvious and extensive conflicts of interest.
Yes. I mean, Robert F. Kennedy, he doesn't believe in vaccines. I mean, it just doesn't
That
make
one
any sense.
stumps me because mumps, measles, rubella
Yeah.
have been a staple. And we had in Milford the issue with TB. And the FinCom supported spending more money on visiting nurses to make sure that immigrants, and I'm picking on immigrants because they're people who came from different parts of the world where TB had not been eradicated.
Yes.
So
Right. So you got to make sure you wipe it out.
that was it. And when we found out that the immigrants weren't taking their medicine, the only way to get them to take the medicine is to have a nurse there.
And watch them take it.
And people came to me and said, "You're ridiculous. You're spending all this money on immigrants."
It's public health.
And I said, "Wait a minute. First of all, if I spend money to save children, I'm not going to feel bad about that. But
Doesn't matter who they are.
Let me be very candid. I'm protecting my grandkids.
Who are going to
because
school with these kids.
You put these kids with TB, very infectious, very contagious, into a classroom with other kids.
Well, everybody better make sure you get your measles tighter because
Yeah,
now
I
measles
did.
is.
Well, but that's the same thing. How can you say we're going to allow measles to
It's
spread?
I think RFK Jr. has some serious mental problems. It's pretty clear. to
Aside
me
from the
that-
worm in his brain.
I mean, that may be the source of them, but
Or
you
the
know,
heroin
Well, the
addiction.
heroin and the cocaine
Yeah,
probably
could be
had something to
that.
do with it too. But
And it's not like his whole family didn't try to warn us all either.
Yeah.
You
I
know.
the very decision to appoint a man like that and putting him in charge of the nation's health service is actually an attack on the well-being of the American people. It's actually the only way to explain that is actual malice, actual intent to harm and cause hurt and injury to the American people. It doesn't make any sense any other way.
Yeah, but if you take that approach, he's not harming any specific group.
Doesn't,
not
I don't care
harming
whether
Democrats,
he's,
he's
he
Well,
not-
all
could
right,
be an
so-
equal opportunity spreader of contagion, and that isn't any better,
The
is
rule
it?
of thumb is always follow the money. Why would he be doing this?
Yeah.
It's so that you can privatize this,
Right.
and somebody will be making a profit.
Privatize
off of
what?
The public health.
You privatize public health services. You ruin. You take over government agencies that are providing services of any kind. You ruin them, and then you use that as the justification to privatize.
All
So
right.
that
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
so that your well-connected buddies in the
But you
oligarch
can't make any
class can
money
make,
at it.
well, you
I mean,
can
there's
if
a
you.
reason we have a plant in Jamaica Plain that makes all the vaccines for the state of Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
Because you had to be able to make it for $20 a dose,
Right.
and no company could make it and make money at it.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
the
you-
government had to take over and do it itself.
Well, all right. So, well, if it isn't malice and it isn't profit, then
What is it?
what is it? Because it's not good,
I mean,
right?
Trump demonstrated
So,
malice.
oh wait, could it be treason?
Oh.
Trump
But that's another
demonstrated
kind of malice.
during COVID. During COVID, he knew that it was spread through the air. He knew that people going back to work would be disastrous, and he did it anyway because he wanted a good economy for his re-election campaign. And so Trump has already demonstrated malice. But he put RFK Jr. there. He embraced RFK Jr. because he brought in the crank and quack faction of his party, or independents
he was a Democrat.
He used to be, but much less so since he went on this crazy anti-vax thing.
I mean, when I think of the Kennedy family, I don't quite think of Republican conservatives.
Well,
They're
he's
not.
kind of the black sheep. I mean, everybody spoke out against him. Literally, his own siblings, his
They
cousins,
basically
everybody.
disowned him.
Yeah, he lost favor, I would say, like 4 or 5 years ago, and he has not been part of our coalition for a
Well,
long
where I'm
time.
stuck with him is basic question: what makes him qualified?
He's not.
He's
not.
not.
I mean,
None of them are. The only arguable one was the guy who was Secretary of State.
Rubio?
Rubio.
Marco
And
Rubio
he's
seems
proven
to be-
himself to be not so good
he's
either.
kind of an empty suit.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, Christy Noam, the puppy killing,
Right.
I think goat killing also.
Yeah. Fascist Barbie.
Fascist Barbie who poses in front of.
Stop!
Well, but that's what she is. And she's posing in front of the prisoners with it
With her Rolex and her makeup
it
and
harkens
everything.
back to World War II. I mean, it's disgusting. And she was in a Senate, I think it was a Senate here, was some congressional hearing this week.
It was a
and
Senate.
and Maggie Hassan from New Hampshire asked her, can you define habeas corpus? And she defined it as the right of the president to be able to kick anybody he wants to out of the country.
Which is kind of the opposite
Yeah,
of what
exactly
it is.
the opposite. They're like, no, it's actually the right to ask the government why you're being held before you are imprisoned and all of that stuff. It's basic
It's
due
due
process.
process.
Yeah,
It's
that's
what
simple.
separates us
It's the
from North
simplest
Korea.
thing. Yeah, so she either is too dumb, or she refused to actually say the truth. And that's what you find. You go through every single government agency.
She's the head of Homeland Security, a major
A law enforcement
a
oriented
law enforcement
thing
organization through and through.
Now, I'm stuck because there's things I hear that, like, we've had a problem with local churches,
Yeah.
that some of the immigrant community, the Spanish, Hispanic community, they're not going to church as much because they're scared.
Yeah.
They're scared
School
when they
too?
found out that
Because,
ICE
yeah.
was at St. Mary's Church arresting people.
Yeah.
So I had our police chief come on the show,
Uh-huh.
and I
What did
point
he
blank
say?
asked him, Robbie, were they just picking up random brown people? Was this, I mean, I hate to use the term brown people, but
Well,
Hispanic-looking people? And he said, no, the ICE group that came in had specific warrants for criminals.
Not to disparage our chief of police. I don't know what he knew, but I am telling you, and there's been court cases on it, so it's not like I'm just pulling this out of my butt. People are getting disappeared off the streets daily in Milford and in other towns all across
in
the
Worcester.
country. Yeah, and it's been on video. I mean, the most blatant example that's on video, aside from that Worcester one, which is the most recent one, was this woman who's just walking down the street in Somerville, and a bunch of masked men just grabbed her and threw her in a car. No identification, wearing masks on their faces. I mean,
And then they flew her to Louisiana.
flew her to Louisiana, and they wanted to ship her out of the country. And the only reason that didn't happen is because, thankfully, there was video, and they were able to, get a judge to listen. There was an order to bring her back. She only got released like last week.
Yeah, she was in prison for several weeks.
And she has asthma. She has a medical condition, and they wouldn't even allow her in Louisiana. They wouldn't even allow her inhaler. And what she did, this terrible crime that she did, she wrote an editorial about her position in favor of the Palestine people who were getting blown up. So, if you can't express your opinion, it's the very First Amendment. It's the very
That's
first
that
one.
pesky First Amendment.
Yeah. And, she's a student here. I mean, universities, that's where you're supposed to be able to express your opinion. So, and then, a technicality, they lifted her visa the night before without giving her notice. So here she is just walking down the street. So this is what they're doing. So if the chief is saying, yes, they have warrants, then what they have are administrative warrants. They're not all,
Okay,
you have to have a
Lauren,
judicial
I got to stop
warrant.
you. You know what that means. To me, a warrant is a warrant. As a
It's
judge
not.
gave
There's a
me
difference.
directions.
There's a difference. And I'm not a
Right.
warrant expert. I don't practice criminal law, but I do know that you're supposed to have a judge sign off on something
Right,
like
isn't that what a warrant is?
No. You can have an administrative warrant, you can have a judicial warrant, and I guess they're different.
Who signs off on administrative warrants, do you know?
A magistrate? I don't know.
They could write it up in crayon. I mean, who knows?
I mean, not all of some of them. I mean, literally, some of them are just photocopies of other stuff. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
that they're all legitimate. There's, there's so much secrecy about it that we don't even know. There's rumors that they're like Proud Boy members. They certainly look like gang members. They don't look
Yeah,
like normal.
There's-
In some areas, they are deputizing locals. In some cases, police officers to help with ICE, but in some cases, citizens.
Now, I have no sympathy for somebody who came to this country. I don't care if it was legally, unlegally, whatever you want to call it, and starts murdering, selling drugs.
Of course not.
So if you tell me that ICE came to Milford for 6 or 8 specific people, one of them was a gun runner, drug runner, I don't really think
Yeah, but
that.
nobody
What
wants
proof
murderers
do
in
you
the
have?
neighborhood. That's not the issue, though, Al. The issue is we're a country of laws, okay? So first of all, innocent until proven guilty. So we're not going to assume they're. That's another thing I don't really like. I don't like that every single time somebody gets arrested, we get to see it on Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh, here's this person,
that
this
is-
brown person. It's propaganda. They're not guilty until they're found guilty. They're just arrested. I don't like that, really. I'm not sitting here advocating for drug dealers and everything. I'm just saying it's propaganda. Like, we're a country of rules and laws.
See,
if you suspect somebody of something, you get a warrant,
me,
you arrest them.
The minute I'm convicted
Yes.
of rape,
Then-
gun running,
Yeah.
drug dealing, when you talk about my rights, my due process, to me, my right is to either be put in jail or sent out of the country.
Okay, well,
I'm not
we
sure
don't
that's
send
legally.
people out of the country
So, but
unless they're
even-
immigrants. Yeah, and then we could.
But even somebody who has been convicted still has certain human rights that have to be observed.
Yeah.
And we have an amendment that protects us from cruel and unusual punishment. There are rights that must be observed, and the reason they're sending these people out of the countries is because
So they don't have to observe them.
is because El Salvador and South Sudan and these other places are law-free zones where this regime, and I refuse to call them an administration, they are a regime. And there's a big difference that we can talk about, but people are being sent out to places where they can be tortured, where they can be murdered in their cells. And and without any repercussions.
But then what's wrong with sending them home? You came from...
They're not necessarily sending them back to the country where they came from. They're sending them back to wherever they want.
Well,
That's
but I'm
another
saying,
issue.
if you committed a crime, a capital crime in the U.S., and you came from East Overshoe, why can't we just send you back home?
You could, but you've got to do it in a
Legal
lawful
way.
fashion. None of this is lawful. All of the way they are doing all of this is wildly unconstitutional and illegal.
It's shock and awe.
And furthermore, you just can't do the mass deportations they want to do without having it be a vast exercise in racial profiling.
100%.
You can't do it without wholesale violations of the Fourth Amendment's guarantee against unreasonable searches and seizures, the Fifth Amendment's guarantees of due process of law and protection against
But Rand,
self-incrimination.
you can do it. You just can't do it as quickly.
You can't do it quickly, and you can't do it by the million. You can't
Yeah.
do it by the million because you can't hire enough lawyers and police officers to do it.
And this is the whole thing about the death penalty, right? The whole argument, one argument against it is, what about that one innocent person, right?
Yeah.
And so you're talking about that father from Maryland that everybody talks about, whose last name is Garcia. The propaganda that Trump is putting out there is he's actually using falsified photos of him with tattoos on his hands,
things that have been
supposedly
photoshopped.
signifying like gang stuff. He's not a gang member.
And it's obviously fake.
And it's obviously
you
fake.
look at it, it's just obviously
But then
fake.
he can't get away with it, because if you took a picture of me and then put MS-13 on my hands,
It's
there's going to be somebody that takes a
Well,
picture of me.
Right, but there's
And
some
there was.
people that are going to believe it, and then there's
It's propaganda.
It's
It's-
propaganda because
it
then
won't
people
hold up
go,
in
"Oh
court,
no,
it's
no, no,
propaganda."
he's a gang member." Because all you got to remember is him saying it, and it's like, "Oh, but I could have sworn he was a gang member." It's propaganda. We are being lied to. We are being lied to, and we are being fleeced. And it's just trying to.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm all up in a.
The other part of this is that ICE has been given quotas, that they have to grab and deport a certain number of people at certain times. 500, 1,000 a week,
And I have
whatever
no
it is.
problem with that if it's legally.
But the thing is that
Think about the incentives that
there
creates,
aren't
though.
that many. It
Yeah.
obviously messes up the incentives, but there's obviously not that many criminals, and I haven't heard of any shootouts or anything like that. I haven't heard of any violence when they're trying to grab people, but I have seen a lot of videos of people, mothers with children getting grabbed. The one that Lauren was talking about, the grad student walking along and getting bagged by a bunch of masked men. I know already the data that's come out so far, and the vast majority of the people who are getting grabbed have no records.
No criminal records.
No
out.
criminal records whatsoever. So they were here illegally, maybe, but they did not have records, and they are being sent out of the country. There's also reports of children who are U.S. citizens who have also been deported. A 2-year-old and a 4-year-old who had cancer, who is now not getting her treatment anymore.
Yeah, but wasn't that the mother was... Now, I heard two sides of that story. One side was the mother was getting deported because she was here illegally, and she wanted to take her child with her. So the child got deported because the mother was deported.
Well, what would you do?
Well, why does
Oh,
that?
I'm not
why does
saying
that-
it's wrong,
Why does
Lauren.
that make a difference?
I mean, there's no compassion in this country at all. There's just no compassion. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but
It's just-
I'll argue there is compassion. Let's see. People come here, we feed them, we house them. That's a lot more than most countries do.
Okay, well,
And they contribute greatly to our country
yeah,
and
they're
get nothing in
most of
return.
these people are working. They are working. They are doing the jobs that none of us would be willing to even do.
But that's why I said I have sympathy for the people who come to the country, put their heads down, work, pay their taxes, and just go along. If they sell drugs, if they murder, it's...
Yeah.
if they write an editorial,
And all of those
That's
things
different.
are already illegal.
And
we
yet-
have
I
we have
disagree with
regular
people who
police.
stand up for Hamas. Anybody who would kill babies and decapitate people, I can't, but
But
that's
that's
my
not
opinion.
what she wrote. She was not.
No, not her, but I'm just saying in general. You want to stand up for the Palestinians as a people? I can understand that.
The Supreme Court actually said that you can say as much hateful speech as you want to, and that goes back to Skokie. So, like, I mean, if you want to be a KKK member, you want to be a member of the Proud Boys, you want to say Hamas is fabulous, whatever, that's allowed here. You're allowed to say the most hateful things ever. Actually, in Europe, they made it very clear that that's not appropriate and you shouldn't be able to do
Yeah.
that, and that there is actually a red line. Not here.
Yeah.
But do we want red lines in freedom of speech?
Well, you just said that you have a huge
Well,
problem with
I have
anybody
it
who-
personally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
I don't like people who stand up for baby killers and all, but I have the right to not like them.
right.
Now, the thing, every 8 years or so in Milford, we get the skinheads come through. And in our mailboxes, you find the fecal matter, they call it the
The,
It's
Crusader.
not every 8 years now. We're
it's
in it every
probably-
day, all day.
So I just remember we ignored them, and they just moved away.
Well, now Trump is saying immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country,
Which is
which is the same talking
Which
points
is-
as those
which
that
is
fecal
Nazi-
matter. It's the
that's-
same stuff.
that's Nazi talk.
Literally the same stuff.
I mean, we have a troll as president. That's what we
And
have.
Stephen Miller
He is-
is even
But
worse.
50% of the country,
They call him Pee Wee German.
Pee Wee German.
Lauren, 50% of the country said he was the right person.
Not actually 50, but yeah,
Well, he won an
he
election.
did win.
He did win
Yes.
an election.
You know, that's what $230 million will do.
But come on, the Democrats didn't raise money.
Not that much.
If you look at the biggest donors, Musk was by far the biggest donor to any campaign, by far. And
Well-
I think Miriam Adelson was second. She gave Trump $100 million plus.
The fact that a majority of people may have elected somebody doesn't prove that they're a decent human being. You know, we can see that in other countries as well. you
Or
know.
that the public knew
You
what they
know,
were going to get.
Viktor
you know?
Orban was elected.
Yeah, but you can't say that. I mean, think about it. We had 4 years of Trump.
We had
Anybody
4
who
years
says
of
we
Trump.
didn't know what we were getting when we
But Al,
elected him again.
There were guardrails the first time.
Yeah.
There were
He was
actually
prevented
people
from
around
doing
him.
a lot
yeah,
of the things
and
that
a
he
lot
wanted
of
to do.
and a lot of that came out after the fact, and yet we still voted him back in. And you know, he lies. He lied throughout the entire campaign. He said he was going to fix the Russian-Ukraine war in 24 hours. It's only going to take a day to fix that whole thing. You know, everything that he said was a lie. He hasn't. None of his campaign promises have come true.
He said he was going to work on the high cost of eggs and things.
But
He
when
doesn't
he
care
said
about
he was going to
that.
stop the problem at the border. My understanding is 90% of the problem's gone away.
He said he was going to deport criminals, but he's not doing that. He's deporting everybody.
and a lot of the issue at the border had hugely reduced by the time he took office.
Biden had deported a lot of people.
Well, and also they instituted, the Biden administration instituted a program to reduce the number of asylum seekers who came to the border. And the way they did that was they created a pre-application that you have to fill out before you show up at the border. And what you get from that is they get the information about your case, and you get an assessment of how strong your case is before you even pay the coyotes to get you to the border. And so this really changed the incentive system for people trying to come to the country to apply for asylum. Asylum has become the de facto immigration law because the official immigration laws quotas are so restrictive that nobody could ever really get in unless they have a job lined up with an employer who's willing to sponsor them. And so the way people come legally now is via the asylum program. And the problem with the asylum program is we don't have enough staffing to actually handle the caseload, and what they have to do to investigate each case is enough work that there is a huge backlog, and that creates a situation where people can come and hope to get allowed to stay in the United States temporarily while their cases are investigated, which can take, an amount of time measured in months or years. It may actually be worth it to people to come and work in the United States for a period of time, and then even if they get sent home again at the end of that, it was still worth doing.
But isn't it?
So what I'm saying is that there is a way to reduce the incentives for people to come here, to reduce the flow without engaging in performative cruelty, like putting
But Rand,
putting razor wire in the Rio
really
Grande
want
and all
to cut
that.
off all immigration?
I do not want to cut off all
I was going to say,
immigration.
all I keep
don't.
hearing is we need people to work.
So this is the
we
thing
do.
that's so fascinating, because we never had this hysteria over immigration before. People who wanted to come here would just come here. It was that simple. And then all of a sudden, 9/11 happened, and so then we got worried about terrorists, which is understandable. But then now it just seems like anybody who just doesn't happen to be white shouldn't be coming here. And that goes to the whole, because now here's Trump, his whole thing was immigration, and a lot of people voted for him only because of that. But he specifically is allowing Afrikaners from South Africa to come here. And he making up a thing about white genocide. Come on.
So I have to say that there was a huge wave of immigration in the late 19th century, a lot of which was driven by anti-Semitism in Europe, and it resulted in most of the Jewish population of the United States being here, and that there was a backlash against that in the early 1900s that resulted in highly restrictive immigration laws that began to be passed from then on through the 1920s, and these laws were explicitly racist in the quotas they applied, and they had the explicit goal of making America whiter, understanding that the definition of whiteness back then didn't include Slavs, didn't include Greeks, didn't include Italians,
Or
Irish, and so there was an earlier wave of backlash against immigration that resulted in the 1930s in the United States turning away ships full of Jewish refugees, who then, some of them had to go back, and they ended up in Auschwitz.
And that's why the last fascist movement in this country
Right.
was around that time period.
Right, it's all connected.
It's, everything old is new again, but,
But
most
isn't
people
the
don't.
fundamental issue, why aren't we moving towards making it easier to legally immigrate?
Yes.
And
Yes.
carry your load?
Yeah, we should have more legal immigration and less illegal immigration.
Because we're not treating people like people.
Because
We're
we're-
calling them, rapists and animals and murderers.
But
So,
Lauren, there will be 1%
And
of the
well,
immigrants.
if there's
there will be.
1% of us.
There's 1% of Baptists
Well, I was gonna say,
are
if
mass
you look
murderers,
at-
it's the same thing.
A population, there is 1% of Americans who are criminals.
Yep, there is.
And guess what? I don't think the immigrants are any better or any worse. There's going to be 1% of them.
Their stats
Now,
are actually better
focusing
than
on
ours.
them,
Yeah,
I have no problem. I have no problem with focusing on the 1%.
absolutely.
But let's make it easier for the 99% who, my grandfather came to this country with $32.80 in his pocket. He ended up in Milford because of the shoe factories.
Yep.
They needed people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He
Highly
came,
skilled
he
craftspeople.
put his head down. When I talked to people who knew him, they said the guy was the biggest miser you ever did see. He wouldn't spend a penny unless he had to, because every penny he made, he put to sending back to Portugal to take care of his 3 daughters and his wife.
And probably make it possible for them to come over here.
Eventually, my mother came, and he came in 39. My mother came in 41 to Milford. My aunts, But see, to me, I see nothing wrong with
The
that.
people in Latin
There isn't
America who are
anything
trying
wrong
to
with
come
that.
here are doing the exact same thing your ancestors did.
We are
and that mine did.
demonizing immigration. I mean, when we first started having these conversations, we were just demonizing immigration. Now it's like there's a full-on war against anybody who came here, unless you're white,
Yeah.
and then it's okay.
You
The,
know,
Apparently.
the situation with the Venezuelans is particularly awful because we basically destroyed their economy. We've been doing technocratic blockades of them, messing with their currency, and so their economy has gone into the tank.
but they had a leader who was basically trying to declare war on the U.S.
No, it was more that the leader was not open to us getting their oil and keeping it in-house under.
Well, here's a country with the biggest oil reserves in the world,
Yes.
and yet they can't feed their people.
Yes, because we won't allow them to sell their oil, and they need somebody to refine it also.
Yeah, they have a lot of heavy sour crude oil,
Yeah.
which takes a lot of refining.
And so, we basically isolated them, like we did for Cuba for decades and decades, and now, their economy is in desperate shape. But before all of this, actually, a lot of the poor people were getting out of poverty. But now, with the stress on their economy and the assaults, I can't remember the fellow's name who we tried to impose on them as their new leader, is now in Colombia, I think now, but we've created a mess of the country, and it's no wonder why a lot of people are trying to emigrate here. They're coming here through the asylum program because obviously their country is a basket case, and now they're being called Tren de Aragua and being shipped back again or shipped to El Salvador.
That's another crazy thing. You immigrate from one country, and then Trump administration is going to ship you to a completely different country.
Well, that's
where
why I
you don't
said
know.
I could see shipping people back home.
Yeah, why go to this country?
Yeah.
This is crazy.
And-
We're paying to house them.
But, there's a lot of people that you hear about. Milford took a hit with the immigration.
Mm-hmm.
$6.5 million a year. For 40 years, because I used to tease Tremblay and the superintendent saying, you've averaged one net student per year. Because in 1974, you had 220 graduated. 40 years later, you had 260.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you need more space? Then all of a sudden, because of the immigration, we're adding 250 kids a year, which is the
It's
size
leveled
of
off though now, right?
the last 2 year or so. It's been flat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's call the ball. It's not just against Latinos and other people. It was people seeing their taxes go up, having to pay for immigrants, and they didn't understand why. I mean, I have some sympathy for people who say, I'm barely making it now, and you're going to increase my taxes to expand your school system.
Well, if our taxes were being spent in a way that was effective, I mean, going back to the federal level, why are we paying for a military parade for this big baby? Why are we doing that?
Right.
Why is that money being spent for that? I don't understand it.
Why do we keep reducing taxes on gazillionaires?
Yeah, who can well afford it, and then the average person can't afford to buy groceries or send the kids to college.
But
Like,
80% of the income tax comes from the top 15%.
Because they make all the money.
They may, yeah, I mean,
But
it's a
because
question of the rate.
It's because of income inequality. The billionaires' income has gone up so fast and so big over the last decade that they make, even if you lower their taxes, they're still probably paying more in taxes than they did 10 years ago. But they're making so much more, it doesn't even matter. And there's no way to rein these people in. With that kind of economic power, they get incredible political power too.
yeah.
So
But you
if
said
we
the last decade,
yes.
8 of those years were Democrats at the
Yes.
helm.
That's right.
because
so
Democrats failed to raise the taxes
We're not
on,
giving
on
the
the billionaires.
Democrats a complete pass
Yeah,
on
let's
this.
talk about
Yeah.
all the Democrats that voted in favor of cryptocurrency. I'm still flabbergasted by that.
Yeah.
And those people are going to be primaried.
I
Well,
hope.
I'm stuck with this whole meme thing, or I listen to the radio and I hear Trump watches. Guy's a billionaire. Why does he need to hawk?
He's been
25
hawking Trump stuff since Trump steaks, Trump wine, Trump.
But it's the same thing
And
that-
by
All this
the
made in
way,
China merch.
But the
Serbia.
Bidens did it with Hunter's paintings. And
Why do we keep talking about Hunter Biden?
Hunter's
Why
a private
do we keep
citizen.
talking about the?
Yeah, but he's a private citizen that flew on Air Force One to
All right.
make
Well, if
deals.
we're going to be
Okay,
talking
yeah, but he
about
wasn't part of the
sons-
administration.
If we're going to be talking about the sons
Then
of
let's
the
start
president,
in on Jared and Ivanka.
yeah,
You know.
who made like a
They're
boatload of money.
Everything Hunter Biden is accused of doing, they did that
They
same
both do
thing
the
about
same
like
thing.
1,000x.
That's what bothers me.
They
Is
did it
neither
with much,
party is
much bigger
clean.
numbers.
And they got away scot-free. Nobody's talking about Ivanka. Nobody's talking about Christian, whose father, by the way, is now an ambassador,
Convicted.
a convicted felon.
When you say scot-free, you're talking about Hunter again?
No, we're
I'm talking about Ivanka.
Oh, okay.
Well, Jared's
Hunter
father,
got convicted, and Biden
he got away
pardoned him.
scot-free.
and Jared's dad is now ambassador of France.
I never liked having my kids. I mean, when we were at Harvard Bio, I hired my son-in-law, my future son-in-law, as an intern.
Mm-hmm.
When he proposed to my daughter, that was a career-limiting move. He had to go.
Yes.
He could not be in the chain.
You couldn't
to
have
me.
it look like nepotism.
And yet,
Guess what?
I mean, in government, it's just not allowed. None of that stuff
Well,
is
that was
allowed.
my point, to say I really enjoyed having him there. He did
Yes.
well.
Uh-huh.
But fundamentally, you could not have him in my chain of command.
Yes.
Yep.
So having two Trump kids in the chain of command never sat well with me.
Well, it shouldn't
Nor
have.
should it.
And neither of them were qualified for any of the
But the
vague
same way,
jobs
having
that they were
Biden
allegedly doing.
kids.
No,
never
not
sat
kids
well with-
plural, one kid. And that kid did not get in trouble for anything having to do with Joe Biden. That kid, if I remember correctly, got in trouble because he was on drugs, was making stupid
Right.
decisions, and he purchased a gun, I think.
He purchased a gun, and then on the form, when he applied for a gun license, there was a line that said, "Have you ever been addicted to drugs or something like that?" And he didn't tell the truth on that.
Yeah, so that's why he got in prison.
Yeah, but at
So-
the end of the day,
But
you're
it's a-
telling me he got a board seat on an energy company that
Who cares? It's not the point. Joe Biden had nothing to do with it, is the point. If Hunter's a liar, fine. He's a private citizen. Nobody cares about Hunter Biden. But we're using him as a false equivalency to excuse ongoing
think both
corruption
of
by
them-
the Trumps.
are dirty.
Yeah, I don't like nepotism either, but
Well,
trying to equivocate between what the Bidens do and the Trumps is just, they're not even in the same ballpark.
I mean, at the end of
Not
the
even the
day,
same
I think
planet.
Biden is a good person. I mean, he might be your typical corporate Democrat, whatever, but he is not a bad person. He is not a bad person at his core. He has empathy for the American
The
people.
problem was
he
people
was a
liked
good
Joe
president.
Biden. He was likable. He was a nice guy.
He was a nice guy, and
He
I mean,
actually is a nice
look
guy.
at his actual record. Our economy was fantastic during the Biden administration. People didn't like the cost of eggs, fine, but the economy, which means a lot, was humming. It was good. And in the first 100 days that Trump came in, anybody take a look at their 401k? It's not doing good.
Yeah, but it's back.
Not entirely
it's
back.
unstable. There's no
It's a
the
stability.
same level
yo-yo
it
up and
was in
down,
January.
and this guy can yo-yo that thing up and down anytime he wants with his tariffs, and all of his friends can do insider trading on it because he's guaranteed that he's set it up so the Justice Department won't prosecute them because they know they can get
But
away with
isn't it
it.
the same thing we had with Pelosi and her husband with the insider trading? See, my problem is we're picking on one person, but
I don't think anybody in Congress should be in the stock market.
right.
Right.
I agree
And-
with that 100%. But they didn't do anything illegal. So what Trump is doing, I mean, it's a blatant violation of the emoluments clause, getting back to the flying palace and the
Right.
cryptocurrency and all of the gifts and bribes and blah, blah, blah. It's in our face, just blatant. all the other stuff, you want to fix all that stuff, I'm right there with you. But until it's illegal, they can do whatever they want
Do you
to.
think it's Trump's modus operandi to go in and shake everything up like crazy and then try and put it back together?
No, I think
No,
it's a modus operandi
shake it
to
up.
make money.
It's shake it all up and figure out how to extract money from it.
But he
And-
doesn't need the money.
He doesn't need the money on paper. 8 years ago, he was broke. That's why he didn't want his tax returns released. He was so overextended.
Yeah, because he's
And-
been lying about his wealth for
Yeah.
decades.
All he wants to do is build hotels. He's currently trying to convince Serbia, I think it is. There was a building that was bombed, and he wants to replace that. It was like a monument, and he wants to replace that with a Trump hotel because he wants the Trumps to have a presence in the Middle East. And it's just it's ongoing grift. There's no comparison. But they're constantly doing this false equivalency, and then we're all supposed to go, they're all crooks, what's the big deal? Well, meanwhile, we're all getting screwed over. So, that's why the only thing that's giving me hope is that the American people are recognizing how bad things are. And this big bad bill, whatever you want to call it, the big ugly bill, blah, 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 that just got rammed through the House at 1 a.m. and just passed, I think, yesterday or maybe early this morning.
Yeah.
I mean, it's doing real damage to the American people. Things that we actually, all of us, rely on: Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, all
SNAP.
these cuts.
Well,
I mean,
and it-
Meals on Wheels, just stupid things.
and it actually has a provision that they kind of snuck in there that exempts government officials from contempt of court citations. So it's basically so they can just say in your face to the courts.
We have three
You know,
separate branches of
but-
government,
so
but
they-
if you don't have to listen to the courts,
And
now
you don't
we've
have to
got,
listen to the Congress because it's run by Trump stooges. And you don't have to listen to the courts because they've been emasculated. Now we really have dictatorship. That's how this happens. It's how it happened. It's how it's happened in other countries that have that lost their democracies and descended into authoritarianism.
it's
Do you believe that could
axiomatic.
happen here?
It is
Yes.
already
Yes,
happening.
it's happening.
It is already
Yeah, I
happening.
disagree.
It is
with you.
happening.
Well,
That's
why
the
do you
thing.
disagree? Why do you feel so comfortable and secure? I mean, are you
Because I
like,
still get to vote.
What if
You know,
your vote doesn't mean anything?
People get to vote in these other countries also.
Yes.
No, come on.
There's
I've been
elections
in
in
the
Russia, Al.
Soviet
Vote for
Union
Putin.
where
There were elections in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
90% you had to vote and you had the
Yeah.
choice of chocolate, chocolate, or chocolate
Or chocolate with chocolate
sauce.
sauce on it.
Trump did, one of his many campaign promises was, just vote this time, this one time, you beautiful people, and you'll never have to vote again. Why do you think he said that?
Because he doesn't know what he's talking about in that piece.
And just that one time?
I don't believe for a moment
Al,
that he can take it away.
Some of the foremost scholars who've studied fascism and authoritarianism are leaving the country.
The guy who wrote on tyranny, Tim Snyder, is in
Yes.
Canada right now. The people are
Along with
flocking
three of his
out.
colleagues.
Yeah. It's scary.
They see what's coming.
What makes me so frustrated with Americans is there are so many people, mostly white, upper middle class suburban people, who are just like, oh, I don't really pay attention to politics. I don't really, Lauren, you're hysterical, blah, blah, blah. And I've been yelling about this. I'm like, and I'm going to keep yelling, because it's the only thing that we have is that hopefully there will be a swell of people that are going to push back sufficiently to make this stop.
So to that end, we should talk about upcoming
June 14th.
upcoming actions. June 14th. Carolyn and I are sponsoring an indivisible No Kings event at the One traffic light in Mendon.
Good for you.
And,
Milford Democratic Town Committee will be at Draper Park on June 14th. And
What's that about?
No Kings
No
Day.
Kings. That's the theme.
There are no kings
We're going
here.
to be there. It's a standout. We're going to be there with our American flags and our signs that say "No kings, not then, not now, not ever."
So you're supporting the system.
I'm supporting the American system,
Yes.
which is being
The Constitution.
Right.
undermined and leached away from us.
Yeah. I mean, what is the alternative? We're going to wait 4 years and then vote?
I was going to say, the worst case is you wait 3.5 more years, and if you believe that it's not right, you change it.
You might want to shut that off, dude.
Yeah, I can't do this.
Yeah, I'm afraid that if we waited the 3.5 more years, it would be over.
Look at all the
Well,
damage
in
that
a
was
year and
done
a
in the
half, you have the
first-
midterms. And if you look at history, the Republicans are probably going to lose either the House or the Senate.
Yeah, I
Because
suspect
they have
that
it
may
by
be the case.
razor-thin margin, and
Right.
normally, am I wrong?
Well,
Well-
hopefully they'll lose the House. That's hopefully. And one good thing I can say from all of this misery is other countries are seeing, actually not
Yes.
even other countries, even in other states, conservative states, people are seeing what has happened on the national level. And so, Canada, there's supposed to be a conservative that won,
Right.
he lost. Several other countries, and all of the special elections that have happened since the presidential
Right.
election have all gone to Democrats. So that's a good sign. But I don't want us to just be complacent and think that our only power is our vote.
No. we
And,
have to-
and we really need to be allies right now, because it isn't fair to the people who are really, really being hurt.
people targeted.
People targeted, gay people, the whole
whose skins are brown,
LGBTQ
people
community,
who are-
anybody
yeah.
with brown skin, anybody who came from another country, anybody who feels disenfranchised right now. We're the people who are in the comfortable position that we can be allies and put ourselves out there and take some risk, and collectively do a good thing. It's not fair to put the burden on them. It's just not
The
fair.
next show, we should talk about the whole movement, because candidly, I don't care if you're gay. I've always had a pretty straight, the wrong word, straight, a pretty easy opinion that says, don't try and make me gay, I won't try and make you straight, and we'll decide if we like each other.
There's
But
an awful
I
lot of
could care
people-
less, when we were going through the gay marriage movement, when they said, well, it'll ruin your life if gay people move next door. I may not have the strongest opinion, but I don't care who you are.
In fact, you might actually have some living next door already. You may not know about it.
Why would I
because-
care?
Because up till now, it's been dangerous for them to let on about it.
But see, now Trump is demonizing transgender people. A lot of people voted for him because they were worried about trans people in the bathroom.
There's a lot of anti-gay propaganda now also, and the popularity of gay people is going down in the Republican Party. And so you can bet that after they've done their business with trans people, that the gay people will be getting rid of gay marriage and further marginalizing them will be on the agenda.
Do you really think so?
Yes.
Yes.
Of course, it is. It's what you do as a demagogue. You distract. You get people focused on.
But this country
Focus over
has
there.
come out and said, we don't care if you're gay.
Important.
They reversed Roe versus Wade. They can reverse can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of the case. but-
Obergefell.
Thank you, Obergefell. Yeah, they'll reverse that too. Read Project 2025. It's all there.
That's the plan. To the
Yeah.
extent that there's a plan, that's the plan.
This was interesting tonight. We'll get together again
We will.
and see the next 120 days.
Assuming we're not black bagged or something.
Yep.
Yeah, right? ICE will be picking us up in Milford. I'll let you know if there's a warrant.
Somehow I don't think they're going to mistake you for a Hispanic immigrant. Me on the other hand, But as always, thanks
Keep wearing that tie.
to our 6 loyal viewers. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. And as always, may God bless. May tomorrow be a better day than today. Good night, all.